Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Final Forms for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in registration, but you have to know this. Final Forms is more than just forms and registration. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and it's a service that serves schools with things like compliance, communication, and risk management. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with mobile accessibility, has reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that go with athletics. Final Forms can help with team communication, attendance, and even certification management for coaches. And for ADs, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this using secure language translation and ADA compliance. You know, it's time that you talked with a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. Once again, go to finalforms.com/Jake to get started. We also want to thank Huddle for their support. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their team's performance using video and analytics. Huddle is the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. There's always been analytics, but there's a whole lot more. Huddle is also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs. And even the pros use Huddle to help their teams play at the highest level. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Violet Defense for their support of the podcast. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Go to violetdefense.com for more information about their great products. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year while bringing excitement to the gym and creating the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and find out exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales at sidelineinteractive.com. And we also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They have a variety of interactive, touchscreen video consoles and an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Or learn more and get started with your digital Wall of Fame tribute. Go to sales at vitalsignswalloffame.com. You can call them at 614-981-3589, or as I said, email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. And we want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your school by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to North Carolina today, and we're going to be visiting with Michelle Phifer. Michelle is the athletic director at Union Academy Charter School in Monroe, North Carolina. She has an interesting path that's led her to becoming an AD for the last few years. I'm going to let her tell that story. And she and I connected a couple of weeks ago when I had the very good fortune to be able to present at the North Carolina Athletic Directors State Conference. So Michelle Phifer, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to hear what's going on in your part of the country. So we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 5-minute bio, or take 6 minutes if you want to. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Sports involvement and that path that I alluded to that's led you to becoming the AD.
So I grew up actually here in Union County, which is right next to Mecklenburg County, right outside of Charlotte, in a small town of Marshville. Some of you may have heard of Randy Travis. So we always joke that Marshville is the home of not only Michelle Phifer, but of Randy Travis. And grew up here, have played sports my entire life. From as young as 5 years old, I started playing softball and basketball, and just enjoyed it. Played all the way through high school, played at the varsity level all 4 years in high school. Graduated there and went over to UNC Chapel Hill. So I became a Tar Heel and continued to play basketball and softball there, basketball on the club level, and then just intramural softball, got into officiating some.
Oh, wow.
I originally wanted to go into pharmacy school. My lifelong dream had always been to go to Carolina. So when I got UNC, the original Carolina, for all of your South Carolina Gamecock fans, when I first got there, I was going into pharmacy school. I just realized that that was not the path that I wanted to be. I wanted to be out working with people. And so I ended up getting a chemistry degree and went into pharmaceutical sales for about 16 years and covered from UNC and Raleigh and several community hospitals all the way out to the Outer Banks. So I stayed in the eastern part of the state for about 14 years and then moved back to this area about 12 years ago, and wanted to get back to the area so that my children could be around my parents and my brother and his family. And at that point in time, they both got enrolled here at Union Academy, and a lot of things were changing in the pharmaceutical industry. And my kids started participating in sports. I started coaching my son in basketball, when he was 4 years old. My daughter started cheering and dancing at 3 years old. I mean, has always been a passion in our household and continues to be. And so, as I said, a lot of things in the pharmaceutical industry changed, and I had a lot more time on my hands and started subbing here at the school. And when I started subbing, my kids at that time were kindergarten and second grade, and I didn't realize then that the travel, that my pharmaceutical job was really affecting them. And so I just thought, well, they're so young, they don't realize that I'm gone so much, because at that point in time, I was kind of covering the full Southeast. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to think about this. Well, good Lord intervened and knew what was best for our family. And we had an opportunity here at Union Academy to where I could take on a high school science teaching position who happened to be a softball coach. And so my first year here at UA, I was in high school teaching and coaching softball. Continued doing that for 2 or 3 years, and then moved into the assistant athletic director position and had that position for 4 years, and then moved in as a full-time athletic director in February of 2020. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Well, again, not that traditional path, and I'm going to say there's not that many athletic directors probably in the country that have a chemistry undergrad degree.
So, and that, you know, that background has definitely helped, because not only in my role as an assistant AD and now as an AD, I also served as our school's first responder, and filling in when our athletic trainers haven't either covered other events or have been out. And so having that background and having worked in that medical field, definitely, I still get a taste of it with having that secondary role here at the school.
I was going to ask if there were any things that have come up in the job, the school related job, that where that chemistry or pharmaceutical background would come in handy, and you just answered that. So very cool. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely still enjoy that, and having that background, you know, we can get those doctor's notes in, or, you know, assessing injuries or being able to have that communication with the parents has definitely come in valuable. And then I continue to teach sports medicine here at school. And so I still get that passion that I have for that medical side too.
So you got the best of, sounds like all 3 worlds there, you know,
very,
cool.
very good. A very good position. A lot of work, but very good position.
For our listeners, we're visiting today with Michelle Phifer. She's the athletic director at Union Academy High School, and that's in Monroe, North Carolina. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Final Forms for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but Final Forms is more than just forms. Final Forms is a team, it's technology, and it's a service that provides schools with things like compliance, communication, and risk management solutions. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility, and has reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms related with athletic participation. Final Forms can help with team communication, with attendance and certification management for coaches. And for ADs, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And it does this using secure language translation, and it's ADA compliant. You know, it's time for you to talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. Welcome back, everyone. We're visiting with Michelle Phifer from Union Academy High School, Charter High School in North Carolina. Michelle, you shared a little bit about, starting out in pharmaceuticals and getting involved at the school level as a teacher and a coach. Share, if you can, that transition from teacher coach to athletic director, what we say coming to the other side of the desk. What were some of those experiences like getting started?
There was definitely some challenges. I would say first thing that pops into my head is that moving from being a teacher and a coach into then continuing to teach and being an assistant athletic director was that time management and being able to balance my time, making sure that I was still covering everything I need to do and being the best teacher that I could be in the classroom, but then also keeping my responsibilities to the athletic department. And the reason that I wanted to pursue that path is, as I said earlier, I've always had a passion for sports, and I just have always been able to connect with the kids in my time here at UA on that level. And even before I moved into this position, I'm at their ball games and I'm their biggest supporter. And in the classroom, I was always, and I continue to be, an advocate for the student athletes with their other teachers, because I truly feel that student athletes get the best of both worlds, because they are a student in the classroom, but they're then continuing their education after the bell rings, because there's a lot of things that sports teach that you cannot get in any other avenue of life, that can set them up for a lot of successes in life, and how to handling controversy and being able to deal with people, and even dealing with coaches that they don't like. I mean, if you're going to play any length of time, you're going to always have that coach that you don't like. So, transitioning over into that role as far as an assistant AD, it was not necessarily a quote unquote big transition, except for the time part of it, because I did still have that classroom time. It just added a lot more work when it came to scheduling and being able to be there at a lot more events for the time, making sure that we had volunteers in place for concessions and admissions and even cleanup. But I wanted to, when the opportunity came open for the full-time athletic director position, I valued those relationships that I had set up with the students, or that I had developed with the students. And I had those students that keep coming back. Hey, I'm doing this in college, or hey, can I help you with this? And in fact, I had one of my students that graduated 2 years ago reach out to me last week, and can you help me with some organic chemistry here that I'm facing in college? And so I wanted to be involved as fully as I could in their life and helping them to be most successful. So transitioning over, and instead of having to develop that teaching plan for the week, for the quarter, then it just kind of moved into I'm creating schedules and bus schedules and making sure to keep, that line of communication open. So instead of now talking directly on a daily basis with those team teachers that I would be working with, and I'm talking on a daily basis with my coaches and other athletic directors in the area.
You mentioned schedules, and for our listeners, obviously you can't see this, but I'm looking over Michelle's shoulder in her office, and she's got all her sports schedules up there on the wall. It's exactly the way I had it set up in my office, so I'm having flashbacks there. That's cool. Again, having a former student call you up for help with organic chemistry. My son's a senior at Florida State right now, and I'll remember that reference. I'll give him your email if he has any challenges in his chem classes.
And I guess I'm a little weird, because for some reason everybody always talks about how they hated organic, and that was my favorite. And so,
oh yes, you are indeed weird if that was your favorite class.
Yeah, and you mentioned those schedules, and there's never a day that doesn't go by that I'm not changing one of those schedules up there on that board. I mean, that is a never-ending process. I mean, it's like in the classroom where you have to be adaptable and change that lesson plan because you've got a fire drill that happens, or we've got this new person coming in to speak to our seniors about graduation. You're constantly having to move that around. That's the same concept with these schedules.
Yeah. You also mentioned a key point, I think, for our listeners. So many athletic directors, even full-time athletic directors, they still have teaching duties, or they're still coaching. When I first became an AD, I was still the head football coach. I taught a couple weightlifting classes. My last couple of positions, and again, this was all at private schools. I was a full-time AD, so I had the time to do the job. I always like to ask, what's your work situation there? Are you a full-time AD, or are you still coaching?
I am a full-time AD. And as far as coaching, I feel like that I coach every day, whether it's my student athletes or whether it's my coaches. But in the typical setting, I'm not coaching anymore. However, I am actually coaching a softball game this afternoon because my softball coach had a death in the family. So we'll be stepping in this afternoon as a softball coach. And that is one thing that I have told all of my coaches, is that they know that I'm here as a support system. Now, if my swim coach comes to me and says, hey, I need you to run practice today, my first question is going to be, is your assistant going to be there? Because that's not my forte. Now, put me on a football sideline, especially with offensive linemen, or you put me on basketball, softball, soccer, then I'm good to go. That I want to make sure that I do what's best for those kids, but I would absolutely step in and coach at any point in time.
No, absolutely. Great point. And I've done that many times, or I did that many times in my career, assumed that, head coach responsibility role, but I made sure there were some assistants there to help with those sports that I had, really no clue about.
Right. And that's one thing in those sports is where I enjoy attending them, not out of an obligation that I have to be there. But I tell our soccer coach every time that I'm at a game, I learn something new about soccer.
Because that's it's great too for those kids to see, us, out there at those sports that, they might not notice. I'm sure we're there, doing our walkthroughs and things like that, but it's great for them to see, wow, the AD's here. That's pretty cool.
Yes. And I push our teachers at the high school and middle school level all the time. They need to see your faces. They need to see your faces, because then I believe that those kids really start to realize that these teachers care about who they are, not just inside that classroom wall.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. For our listeners, we're visiting today with Michelle Phifer. She's the athletic director at Union Academy Charter School in Monroe, North Carolina. We're going to take another break here from our sponsors, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank our good friends at Huddle. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 200,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help the performance of their teams using video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. There's always been analytics, but there's a whole lot more. Huddle is built for every level of play, from club and youth teams all the way through high school and college programs. And even the pros are using Huddle to help their athletes perform at the highest levels. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches at the college level that you're trying to get to recruit your kids. You want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Welcome back, everyone. We're visiting with Michelle Phifer from Union Academy Charter School in North Carolina. Michelle, we always like to ask our ADs about the mentors that they've had in their lives. None of us get to where we're at on our own. So who have been some of the people that have helped you along the way?
When the question is posed to me, and the very first person that always comes to mind is, of course, my parents. And I know that is a very common answer, but it is honestly the best answer that I can give. And as I say that, I'm tearing up and getting chill bumps, because they were and have been and continue to be so supportive for me. I have many, many memories of going from a basketball game and changing in the car to a softball game, or, moving, because our basketball team, would be in the playoffs, but then we're starting the spring season. And I'll never forget, my parents made a decision to move from a car to a minivan so that Michelle could stand up in the back and change clothes. And, just always having them at the games and making sure I was at practices, and just setting that framework of hard work and persevering through is going to bring benefits long after you get through playing ball. And so then when I step outside of that, I think about one of my coaches in high school, and I continue to talk to him today. I mean, I won't say how many years ago that was, but it's definitely 20 plus years ago. That Coach Eddie Rivers was my coach in high school down at Forest Hills High School for softball. And I have so many great memories of the bus rides and games and pictures. But what really sticks out to me, and one thing that I just think about so much with Coach Rivers, is he developed a nickname for all of us, and continued to be called this up until a couple of years ago when he retired, as he became Pop. I mean, that was Pop. It wasn't even Coach Rivers anymore. It's Pop. But he always took the time to make sure that we were okay outside of the diamond. He always wanted to make sure that we were doing all right. How was the supper last night, or things like that, or you're struggling in a class, what can I do to help? And then when I moved away and went to Carolina for school, I have a box full of letters that he would continue to send to me, every 2 weeks, every month for that first 18 months of time that I was in college. Hey, how are you? And sometimes it would just be a quick, hey, just want to check in, thinking about your pop, and talking with some of my former teammates and other people that I have known that had played for him later. He did that for all of his players. And that just really sticks out. It was a big mentor for me because it showed that compassion that he had for the athletes as a person, and not just what they could create and do on the field. It wasn't about the winnings, and wasn't about, hey, can we go get a championship ring? It was, let's make you the best person that we can be. And so, those are definitely a couple of my strong mentors that I've had along my path. And there are many, many others. As I sit here and I say that, I think about other teachers. Yeah, I've got a Miss Hyatt, Miss Stigall, and just things that they have taught me in different aspects of my life along the way. But yeah, definitely my parents and and Coach Rivers. And even now, some of my mentors and people think I'm crazy are my 2 children, is because I'm learning from them every day on how to be a better person.
Now, again, I always love to hear these stories, and it's always very clear that, each individual, now you're mentoring that next generation. So, it never stops, that journey.
No. And some of the best things, the memories that I have in being in the one that mentor now is a couple of weeks ago, UNC was on that championship run for basketball. And I had 4 of my former players / students that were sitting up in the Dean Smith Center in Chapel Hill watching the game. And I'm actually down at the North Carolina ADA meeting. I'm sitting in the hotel room getting ready to watch it, and I get a FaceTime call, and it's these 4 babies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just made my night, because they, thought they were sitting there in the midst of this fun time, and they thought about me to call me. So every bit of these long hours worth it when you get a phone call like that.
Oh, no, absolutely. What a great memory. And thanks for sharing that. Talking about journey, we have a lot of younger ADs that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important for them to hear about the journey that, you and I have taken, and many others, on with our state association and with the NIAAA. So share a little bit about, where you're at. How did you first become aware of, the North Carolina ADA Association, and what's your involvement right now with NIAAA?
Well, but as I moved into becoming an assistant AD, I got really involved in taking the courses through the National Federation of High School Learn website. And so I made sure to go through all those courses, and not only taking my required courses, but then continuing to get my accredited interscholastic coach and certified interscholastic coach levels, which are now moving over to that level 1, level 2, level 3 coaching status. And so that was something I had done before moving into the AD role full time. Well, as I said earlier, I moved into this position in February of 2020, and we can all remember what happened about a month later, which is when the COVID pandemic really hit the United States and the world at that time. One of the things that I pushed my coaches to do during that time was continue their courses and really increase the number of courses that they took. Hey, we can't have athletics. We're not on the sidelines right now. Let's get these classes. And so we were able to receive a level 1 honor roll certification through the NFHS. I have always believed in that we have to take every day and learn something every day. And I've always been, I want to get better. I want to continue my learning. I want to do something. And so after receiving the CIC certification through the NFHS and going through the NCHSA coaching meetings every year, the North Carolina ADA became something that I really wanted to pursue. And I looking at getting my certified master's certification. And had said that as a plan from day one, that is something that I wanted to do. Well, of course, the challenges with COVID and being a full-time AD, that it was just not the right timing. And so now that I've got my feet wet and we're here 2 years out and everything seems back to as normal as possible, I started taking my courses several months ago and have currently got all of my basic courses out of the way. And I'm in the process of scheduling my CAA exam and working towards getting my master's. So that's where I am. So.
Well, for our listeners, we're recording this on April 27th, and our Florida FIAAA conference is this coming Saturday. So, Michelle, if you can make it down to Orlando this weekend, you can sit for the exam, and we'll count you on Florida's roster there.
But, we'll go ahead and get that. I would not have a problem with that, other than we've got prom this weekend, and I don't think daughter would be very happy about that.
No, but again, that's so great to hear that you're pursuing a number of professional development activities, through the National Federation, the Certified Coaching Program, going to your state conference and, taking those workshops. And then, as you alluded to, one by one, taking care of the NIAAA's required courses. So as someone who spent many years on the NIAAA's National Certification Committee, we thank you for that dedication. So
it's definitely, you get a little bit out of everything. And I've always told myself, my kids, my students, my coaches, that we've got to have that goal of continuing to better ourselves. And things that I've already implemented just from going through these courses and from the conference a couple of weeks ago, and things that I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do to make this better. And it's only going to improve our athletic department. And again, all of our student athletes and coaches.
No, absolutely. That's what you try to do. Okay. Again, for listeners, we're visiting with Michelle Phifer. She's the athletic director at Union Academy Charter School in Monroe, North Carolina. We're going to take another quick break, but please stay with us. We'll be back with more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support. It's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. We actually had one of the very first Sideline Interactive video boards in Florida, still have it in our gym, and it's a great tool. You really need to check these folks out. Go to sidelineinteractive.com, or you can call them at 832-786-0302 to see a live web demo of their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Find out exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Hey, welcome back. Our interview today is with Michelle Phifer from Union Academy Charter in Monroe, North Carolina. Michelle, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Now's the time where we like to try and share some best practices. So what are some things that you do at Union Academy that when you take a step back, you can say, boy, we really do a great job with this? Do you have any best practices?
The first thing that comes to my mind kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the last segment, is pushing my coaches to continue to look at new ways to find for improving their education. Again, we can always learn something new. And so I want to continue to push them. Find another class. Let's say my soccer coach doesn't have a clue about tennis. Well, go ahead and take a tennis class. It may become a passion for them. So I definitely think that one of our best practices is not only holding my coaches responsible for what the NCHSA requires as their courses, but each year they are required to complete a second and a third course on top of those. So I've got to have them do 2 additional courses through the NFHS Learn website, to where they are, continuing to improve their practices. Another thing that we are very strongly focused on is that Union Academy is a nationally recognized charter school for character, a character charter school or character school. And so we hold our students our high school students responsible for completing 105 hours of community service prior to graduation. They are not able to walk if they don't get those 105 hours in. So I have our coaches set up times to where we do various community service projects as a team. Now, that's, of course, is not a way for them to get all of their 105 hours, but it's definitely a way that each year, each of our teams are going out into the community, working together for the good of the community, but it's also a great team building moment for them, that they get to be together outside of their field of play. So that is another requirement that we hold our coaches to, and something that we are very, very proud of is that we did get that national recognition for the fifth year. They go in 5 years increments. And so this was the second time last year that we became a nationally recognized school of character. And the last thing that we are very, very excited about, and this was something that got started a couple of years ago, is that our campus is a K-12 campus. And so we've got, the babies that are in fifth grade, that are 5 years old, all the way up to our seniors that are getting ready to graduate and go into the next part of their lives. Well, each month, our seniors usually, but anybody in our high school athletic department will go and read to a classroom, or they'll have a buddy that, let's say we've got a high school basketball player. Well, he will go and find a middle school basketball player, and that's his buddy for the season. And he'll leave little, hey, good luck in the game, or great job, or it's your birthday, or thinking about you, little, drop-offs in their classroom. And so that buddy system and that interaction of our older athletes with those younger athletes. And we're very lucky that we have a rec organization that caters to those younger athletes. So then we have those high schoolers that will come in and be the referees for their games, or they'll run the clock, or they'll be there on the sidelines doing water. And so that is something that we are very, very proud of here at Union Academy, is having that growth, because as we were talking about earlier, that mentor. And if one of these little 5-year-olds looks back and is walking down the hallway and they see a senior, they're like, oh, hey, they know him by name, or hey, you were at my ball game. And it just really, that community wide feeling here on our campus.
I really love those examples. We used to do, very similar, the reading programs with the little kids and the buddy programs. And it's not anything related to, skill acquisition or strength and conditioning or
Right.
a team, but it's those types of things. And this, that are part of that whole culture that help create, success on the court or success on the field. Very cool stuff. Michelle, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit and find out more about how you do things at Union Academy, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, obviously the easiest way, since I'm not able to send out an email, would be to visit the Union Academy website and go under our employee directory and click on my name there. But if you've got a pen and a paper, you can write down my email address. It's Phifer, which is PHIF as in Frank ER @unionacademy.org. And that's definitely the easiest way. And if you reach out, don't be surprised if you get that email back at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, because there's definitely not enough hours in the day some days.
All right. Michelle Phifer, Union Academy in Monroe, North Carolina. We're going to take another break, but we will be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thank you to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They've got a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles and an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. or learn more and get started with your digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589 or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to our interview with Michelle Phifer from Union Academy Charter School. Michelle, one of the questions we've been asking our ADs has to do with this idea of developing toughness. 100 years ago, when I was in high school, my coaches would say things like, come on, guys, you got to be tough, or come on, Jake, you got to suck it up. And we knew what they meant. I think in the many years since I was in high school, we've learned better ways to communicate to our kids and get these ideas across. But in my opinion, toughness is still an important component of sports and of life. So my question to you is this: how can we help kids develop this characteristic of toughness while also being sensitive to and aware of the very real challenges that a Generation Z kid is experiencing that I never had to go through? Do you have any advice for us?
Well, when I think about that question, the first thing, of course, that comes to my mind is along the same lines that you said. Well, you got to suck it up. I mean, again, playing softball and basketball, they can be pretty aggressive. I always joke about how you never thought about girls basketball, but it is a lot more aggressive a lot of times than basketball, just that physicality part of it. And growing up, you hear, oh, if you ain't got a bone sticking out or rub some dirt on it, get back in the game. And that is definitely not something that we can tell this generation now. And so we do have to find new ways to reach them and teach them how to be tough, how to be resilient. And we can't, as athletic directors and as coaches, walk away from that responsibility, even though with the way that social media is, everybody's got the cell phones out, everybody's recording everything, that we have to walk and make sure we're doing the right thing, because you never know when we're on that video of fussing at a kid or grabbing that face mask and get back in there or whatever, that fear. But we can't walk away from it, because as I said early on in this discussion, sports and athletics teach life leadership skills that cannot be taught anywhere. It teaches working together. It teaches being able to not be the best all the time, having to continue to persevere, having to be adaptable, playing in the rain or move into a new position. And so some of the advice that I give to coaches is all goes back into, we've got to know our athletes. We've got to know how to communicate to them. And my son is a football player, and this probably I can be very hard on him at times too, is he responds to that, let me grab that face mask and, hey, get back in there. Now, that being said, that, what are you doing? What were you thinking? But it comes out of it on the other side. That's what I'm talking about, with the big hat, slap on the back. My daughter, on the other hand, being raised completely the same way, I can look at her and what I do, and it's kind of starts, oh my gosh. So even two children in the same household will react different. So it goes back to the coaching, is that you may have those 15 baseball players. Well, you need to know that this baseball player, number 15, is going to respond to, let's get in there, boy, let's rub some dirt on it. But number 3 over here might need that. Okay, buddy, you're okay. And each time that we can communicate with those kids on a level and help them figure out how I get through these difficult moments, is only going to teach them to keep pushing, making them tougher. When they get that denial letter into a college that they really wanted to, or they are turned down for a job offer that they really wanted, then they're like, okay, I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to get back in there, but I'm going to do it on my own terms and the way that Coach Williams showed me how to do it. Yeah. And secondary to that part, I think athletic directors can help not parenting in the household, but during our meetings that we have with our parents, kind of go through that moment to let our coaches coach and make sure that the parents are stepping outside of that for those couple of hours. You're trusting us with your athletes to be on our team. Now trust us in that we are learning the best your child and how to teach your child, not just the best way to kick a soccer ball or to be a goalie, but also the best way to deal with different challenging moments.
I love the examples that you gave, because it took me back to my own football coaching days. I had a quarterback, a 3-year starter, great kid, but he was that kid that thrived on, come on, and, getting in his face and also giving instruction. When he graduated, his replacement was a much more, let's say, physical specimen of an athlete. But it didn't take me very long to realize that when I did that to him, come on, he would just wilt. And
Right.
I had to really, some of my assistants would say they could see the veins popping out of my head as I was calmly, coaching the kid. But you're absolutely right. You've got to find that best way to reach each kid and help them do their very best.
And along those same lines, when we do that, then each kid is also teaching us something new as well. Yeah, a great story. And again, I hate to keep talking about my own personal experiences with my own children, but my son's football coach here at Union Academy, Justin Frazier, he tells a great story to where he was really on my son at a practice one day, which I was 1000% supportive of. Get on him when you got to get on him. And then he's like, well, my son then walks up and taps him on the shoulder. He'd be like, Coach, it's okay. We've got cardinal pride. We're going to be just fine. And it kind of made my coach step back and be like, okay, yeah, I know I can get on this kid, but maybe I sometimes just got to laugh things off too. And, it just became a teaching moment for him, because he's like, oh, well, it's time to kind of laugh that off. And he actually battled cancer last year and has been able to get back on the sidelines this year. And that in and of itself has just been a very great moment for our football program and our athletes, and teaching perseverance and toughness and resilience and not giving up and continuing to believe in what you need to believe in.
I'm so glad you shared that aspect. And, for me, the thing that rings true about that anecdote is, your son went up and said, hey, coach, is going to be okay. But he was able to do that because of 1,000 other interactions that coach had with him at a different personal level, to where the kid felt comfortable and knew, all right, this coach is on my back. Because I need to, get better in this area. And that's just his style. That's how he communicates. But, your son knew that the coach cared about him. That's why.
1000%.
Yeah. So again, I think that's the point that some coaches and ADs miss. And I think a lot of parents miss too. They don't get to see those 1,000 other interactions. They just see that one time on the sideline, where the coach is, let's say, coaching at a higher intensity. Okay.
Great way to put it. Great way to put it. I had a prime example of that earlier this year with one of my coaches. Is myself and our high school principal was actually at a practice. It was beautiful. It was one of these warm days finally back in February, and we were at a practice. And I bet you we heard 1,000 times that day, good job, great job, all this positive reinforcement, negative word. And then one comment was made like, well, that was stupid. Mm-hmm. And it was not directed towards a player. It was not directed towards anybody in particular. It was more directed towards, well, that was not a smart decision with how you played the ball. Well, of course, then the players are leaving there thinking, oh, well, I'm stupid. And so it's kind of like that whole moment to where you've got to have that relationship to where, okay, they forget all this positive just because of one or two comments. And if you've got that relationship, as we've mentioned, then they understand this is not a personal attack. This is him or she helping to make me better.
No, absolutely. It's all part about being a great coach. Very
yes.
Good. Well, Michelle, this was really cool. Seeing you again, connecting with you, but we're not done. We always like to wrap up with the athletic director's toolbox. So in just a minute, we're going to take a break and hear from Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack as they sponsor our AD's toolbox. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So let's hear from Athletic Surveys, and then we're going to come back and find out what's going to go into Michelle Phifer's Athletic Director Toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really do love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them show you how to take your athletic program from good to great. We have been visiting with Michelle Phifer, the athletic director at Union Academy Charter School in Monroe, North Carolina. Certainly knows her way around the world of athletics, but right now I'm going to task her with sending out a brand new AD, but I'm only going to let her put 3 things in their toolbox. Michelle, what 3 items are going to go into your athletic director toolbox?
Let's see, for a new AD, the very first thing that I would mention to them would be a planner and a box of different color pens with whiteout. I know, in the age of technology and computers that we really rely on the digital calendars. And it works for a lot of people, but it is very, very beneficial to me. And I have, had other people move in this direction to where we still have that paper calendar of a planner, and we have our sports listed by certain colors. And so you can take any particular day and it be right there in front of you. And you say, all right, this is what I've got going on today. This is where I've got this team going. I've got to go paint a field. So definitely whiteout and a box of colored pens with your planner would be the number one thing that I would tell any new AD they had to have in their toolbox. Number 2, I would put maybe a timer or a stopwatch. It is very easy to spend your entire day on this job, especially in these spring sports when you've got 14 or 16 different teams that's going on. If you've got middle school and high school that you're responsible for, and being able to hit that stopwatch and say, okay, I've got to walk away from it. I've got to take a minute of time just to be able to walk away and catch my breath and see my family and sit down and actually eat a meal instead of eating a Slim Jim and peanut M&Ms as you're walking out to the field or to a bus. So definitely I would say that you need to have that stopwatch or that moment to just, I've got to stop. And then a third thing is making sure that you have a good support system and coaching staff, that you're not afraid to get rid of some of the bad apples if you've got some bad apples, and that you've got that support staff that that you can trust. You got a baseball team that's leaving out this afternoon at 1:15. I know that my coach is going to do the right thing, not only for the game, but on the bus, coming home, making sure to take care of his players and on the field of play. So making sure that you've got the right people in place and not being afraid to challenge them and push them if you're seeing that there are any issues, and continuing to make them better, but then also celebrating and rewarding them out of the positives that they do. And I know you said only 3, but I cannot end the segment without saying you've got to be able to have that willingness to work with people and patience. And that's never needed more in today, and not just in athletics, but with us as a society, and is accepting each other, and that we all have our differences, but be willing to take a moment to hear what other people have to say.
Oh, I have no problem with you adding a fourth tool like that, and all of them were great. You and I were talking a little bit about, the you said the planner. I would tell our coaches that you might have a game on the website, you might have a game on your computer, but if it's not in my planner, that game doesn't exist. So
Yeah, exactly true.
very cool.
You can't have all those color pencils without having that white out though. So especially in the spring and here in the Southeast, it's constantly changing.
Yeah, well, I already alluded to that we're kindred spirits because I can still see that those schedules over your shoulder there in your office, taking me back to my office. Michelle Phifer, thanks again for being a guest on the podcast. If one of our listeners wants to reach out and pick your brain a little bit more, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
You can visit our website at unionacademy.org and go to our employee directory and find me that way, or you can email me at mphifer@unionacademy.org.
All right. Again, thanks so much for being on the podcast today, and all the best moving forward.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I feel like time flew by. So I hope that some of your listeners was able to get a little bit of knowledge out of today.
Oh, I'm sure. Very good stuff today. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews are being uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. And before we go, we want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can find out more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com and talk to their experts. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. Thanks again for listening to the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be back again tomorrow with more great interviews. Thanks for listening and have a great day.